So today I want to share experience from working closely with homeowners directly and insurance adjusters, especially through challenging claims like many of the fire losses in the Palisades that are still being dealt with. They had their year anniversary on January 7th, and a lot of the homeowners who were affected, property owners who were affected, had a couple marches and a memorial for those who were lost during the fire. So it's honestly pretty wild working with my clients directly there. A lot of emotions, understandably, and a lot of delays from their carriers to think that a year's been going by and some hadn't even received any money from the loss yet, and or some worst case scenario had money sent and then it was redacted, and some got that initial bump from their carrier and then just crickets for 10 months, nothing to be talked about. So when disaster strikes, what I find is clear communication is not just helpful, it's essential. And I've firsthand seen how being proactive, but more important, informed, can make the difference between a stalled claim and a successful outcome. So why does communication matter? Because your story, your needs, and your documentation is what actually drives results. So I'll walk through the claims process, how I view it, and not just as like a checklist, but it's more of like a journey where the property owner, your voice, starts to matter in these type of claims. So the first thing is, I think, understanding an adjuster's role. This is probably one of the areas most clients that I work with either have a misunderstanding and or maybe put too much weight on the adjuster's role in the whole process. So let's demystify the insurance adjuster. An adjuster is a person assigned by your insurance company to investigate the claim, assess damages, and then recommend what should be paid out. But they do that through a lot of different means. Sometimes it'll be a field adjuster who actually ends up on site. Now in the Palisades, not all the houses are standing, so this becomes really a moot point. There's nothing to look at really. And so then you end up having a desk adjuster, or in my opinion, the worst case scenario, you don't even have an adjuster. You have what they call like claim examiners, claim handlers, and they'll have tiers of that. Claim examiner 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those people have no power to actually send you money. So all they're really doing is just gathering data, making opinions about what should be paid or not paid. And that's usually what stalls a claim that I've been finding, is there's not even an adjuster looking at the data. It's just held up by one person saying they need a lot of more information from you when they really don't. What they need is an estimate, and not even from a contractor, just something that assesses the value of that loss. So that's what I personally do, is create estimates, both an Xactimate for rebuilds or remediation, and then exact contents. We're doing a full inventory of someone's belongings. And if it's a total loss, that becomes a little more challenging. Some people have had zero work done towards that. So we're just on the phone, or they're texting me or emailing voice chats of, I had this, I had this, I had this, I had a bedroom and 2 kids, and I skied and I played tennis and I golfed. That's one way to start building an inventory and just seeing how much value can we get off of that basic info. Now, some people have looked through their photos and receipts and purchase history and built a fairly detailed estimate and still find it hard to get an approval from a carrier, most of the times just because it's not written in the language of the carrier, being exact contents. We'll actually talk about that in a different video today or tomorrow. But here with the adjuster, there's gathering info. So if the house is a total loss and it's no longer there, the only way they can do that, in their opinion, is to get all this information and gather it. And that's endless. It can go on literally for 18 months and they still never create an estimate of the actual value of your loss, which is a big problem. So we just supersede all that process, get to the estimate, and then start having a real conversation. But the job of the adjuster is to balance the policy terms with what your needs are. But remember, they work for the insurance company, not for you. And in many cases, I've seen how different adjusters will bring different approaches to this. So some are responsive and others non-responsive. And I think that knowing that helps stay patient, persistence, and strategic. And the main strategy is, if an adjuster isn't working or a claim handler isn't working to move a claim forward, then what do? We kind of just start from scratch. So looking at what the adjuster's role is here, what we would say basically is they gather info. And I think the other part that's important is they're supposed to be communicating. And if this is not happening, then we just get a new adjuster. And I think that's probably the most important thing. So the worst case scenarios I've had is they're not listening to what's being said. I've had some carriers, adjusters, that they literally will kind of go from yes, 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 and they'll say they'll do all these things, or they'll say, yeah, I'll get back to you, and their email has nothing to do with what they said they were going to do. Another worst case scenario is they'll just delete files straight out of the portal, and they no longer exist there. And I think that's a big problem that I've seen, but it's not really what they're supposed to be doing. But emails start to go missing and documents start to go missing, and I think that is a huge problem. And then unresponsive, just if in my opinion, if a carrier is not responding within 2 to 3 weeks, that's a big problem. There should be some sort of communication, and even if it's just their indemnity department that says, hey, we're reviewing this. So if there's quietness for too long, there's probably a big issue happening, and can be solved very quickly from just understanding what needs to be said, how to say it, and kind of get that claim moving again in the proper direction. So but that's my opinion on an adjuster's role. And I think what we'll look at next is how to prepare to communicate with an adjuster. So I think preparation is a superpower. It literally is amazing, where not just to always throw emails at an adjuster, and because a lot of times in these large losses, what you'll find is that you want to say so much, because there is a lot of important things happening, both personally on the claim and what's left to be done on the claim. So it feels like there's a lot to say. What I find a lot of times is just storing that in our side of the case file, not with the carrier, but on our side, where I'll just keep track of a bunch of checklist items that I know I need to address at some point. Now that could be 2 weeks from now, 3 months from now. It's just not all the time is the info important to share. So preparation to prepare to communicate with an adjuster, and figure out what is the most important next step of what needs to be said. And I think that's been what I find is probably the most valuable thing I bring is, yeah, all of that is important. Everything that was just said is important, but we're only going to send them this. That becomes amazing in a claim moving it forward. So gathering things, like they'll say this too, an adjuster will always ask you for estimates. And that could be from a subcontractor or a contractor. Don't send those. They actually don't need those things. They don't need subcontractor bids. They don't need, well, they kind of do need your contractor estimate if that's all you're working with. But when people work with someone like me, who's like a estimator and a claims manager, what my company does, and I do directly, is I send our estimate, not your contractors who you might be in contract with, our estimate, meaning you as the property owner and me working together, looking at your contractor's bid, seeing if that's all we should be bidding for, or if there's more. And in most cases, I'd say in 100% of the cases, a contractor's bid is very different than what you should be submitting as your claim estimate. They're two separate things. One is real world. This is what the builder's saying they can build it for. What your claim value is, what you should be paid for. Those are two separate things. Now, granted, all this money is going to go to the build, but a contractor usually is missing certain items that need to be submitted to full value. So invoices is another thing carriers will ask for. Don't send them. Keep them in your paperwork. Test results, same thing. They should be getting that info themselves. They'll try to pawn it off on you to spend your money, and then they say they'll reimburse you. A lot of times I've seen, not majority of the times, but a lot of times they won't reimburse you. And now you're stuck with having paid for this thing that they're like, well, we'll maybe get to that, and it can be months and months and years before they ever send you a reimbursement. And then any correspondence. I'm not going to even try to spell that. I'm just going to say like emails, communication, and comms. So keeping track of that stuff is very important. I find that when creating like a claim document, I always tell people, forward me every email you have. And I just did it last night. I had 140 emails. I'm down to 18 in my inbox. And the way I do it, I read everything. I look at all the documents, all the photos, all the text, make sure I understand, where has this claim been? Where are we today, and where do we need to go? And I think that's the most important thing, is understanding timeline in preparation becomes very important on a claim when moving it forward. So timeline of the events, that's a very important thing. So if you're like, well, it happened, we didn't do anything for the first 3 weeks because we were very emotional, understandable. And then it would be, hey, we reached out to the demo companies. They said they could get rid of things. Then we had a meeting with our adjuster. Then we had a remediating company come out and look at like, what's it going to cost to do these things. We had our contractor. Just keeping a track of all of those in a timeline is very good. And then I think questions to the carrier is one of the most important things to document. So there's a few things. Asking like, what is covered? And this one is an interesting one because they'll, like a claim I have recently, they're saying they're going to cover things. They have not denied coverage by any means. The house is burned down. Obviously, they're going to do something. They sent an initial bump, I think, of like 65%. And then now we've been sending all this documentation trying to get more released from them. And we've gone through, I think, the last 8 weeks, sent in a lot of info to them. And then they came back with a very like vague answer of, well, you know, we're willing to pay these things either when you get them done, so just send us a receipt and we'll pay it, and or they're like, well, this is what we're going to pay, but we can't explain the details of it. We're just going to pay for insulation. We're going to pay for, you know, putting back your house structure and drywall, but there's not detail to it. So it's very hard to know when looking at contractors, well, how much am I actually budgeted for these areas? That is a responsibility that they have to do. So when it says, well, what is covered? What I mean is, what are you covering of what we sent in very line itemed out? And that's the importance of an estimate that you're in control of going to your carrier, because now you can say, are you not paying for this line item? Are you not paying for this line item? In the Palisades, I mean, a lot of these estimates are 2,000, 3,000 line items, that my goal is always to make the carrier respond on line item 1. Are you covering that? On line item 2, are you covering that? The HVAC, the electrical, the drywall, in every single room, are you covering that? Are you covering redoing the sidewalk? Are you covering redoing the stucco? And just get them to respond to everything line by line is very important. And then asking them, what's the next step? If they don't max out the coverage, always understanding that I like to put timelines to things. So if they say, hey, we'll get back to you once we review it. Cool. When do you think that's going to be? And who is reviewing it? Those are questions that I think are very important, because now we understand the next step. If they say Friday at the latest, follow up on Friday. If they don't respond, follow up on Monday, and just continue to stay on them. And if they say another date, follow up on that date. Hey, I didn't hear from you. And what I find a lot of the times, and this has been literally my whole, like, probably last 7 days, oh, sorry, we're going to get to you on Friday now. Oh, sorry, we're going to get to you on Monday. Oh, sorry, we need another week. It's just delay, delay, delay. But it's important for preparing all those communications, because then when I ask for a reassignment, hey, I just don't think it's working with this adjuster. I think we're getting a lot of delays unnecessarily. I'd like to ask for a new adjuster. Very important. I've had some claims that I've got a reassignment for my client, the property owner, up to 8 times. We just look for the right adjuster, because there are some really good ones out there, and I think that that's what the goal is, to find them. And then one of the most important things, what will you accept and what will you not accept? Understanding like, what is your ultimate goal? So if they say, well, we're not willing to pay for this, or we're only willing to pay $10,000 for that door, when you know it's a $60,000 door because it's custom, shipped from overseas, that's something that I would be personally, I'm not willing to accept anything less than $60,000 for that door, because I know that that is a known cost. The carrier or adjuster might not understand, why would someone pay $60,000 for a door? But you did, and you need to. And that's the most important thing, is understanding, what will I accept? And then it kind of gives you motivation. If they don't give that, at least you have a checklist of, hey, I'm not willing to accept that. Therefore, this conversation is still active. So that's a very important piece to the puzzle. And then let's look at effective strategies for communicating. So what I always think when I'm doing anything with a carrier, the main goal when I'm communicating is I try to keep it simple with one goal per email or one goal per phone call. And I know that seems like it might take longer doing it that way, but I find it actually moves a claim much faster by doing it that way. So clear, concise details. So keeping it like very, very simple, one goal per communication. That to me has been very helpful as I've managed these claims in the Palisades. There's so much to talk about, literally so much to talk about. And so if I'm going to call them, now I might have like ancillary issues. So for instance, hey, you guys haven't responded on replacing their ductwork. Now this would be on a still standing home, but you haven't responded on replacing their ductwork and their furnace. Then my sub goal to that conversation, so if we just call it HVAC, that's my one goal. Then my sub goals could be health issues that they might need to know about. There might be things like the toll on emotions for delay. That's something that we might want to talk about. And then just stating like maybe they've already acknowledged it, and or contamination in the home. So this could come from test results, but I actually find everyone knows what's happening in California at this point. The carriers know it, the adjusters know it, and there's no more reports that need to be produced. It's really just pointing at the data. So if they say, well, go get a test result and make sure it's there, I always just respond, I don't need to go get a test result. We all know the facts that all these areas are finding much more chemicals day by day. And the other aspect is we all know in a wildfire, you can't treat this as if I had like an electrical fire, an outlet popped and I smoked out my home. Very different. There's tons of chemicals on the outside. Houses are burning plastics. There's rubbers burning the cars. A lot of chemicals inside the homes. All that stuff got moved through particulates into these areas. So I don't really actually even let them say, well, go get some test results. I go, no, we're not going to. We're not going to do that. Actually, what we're going to do is just push on you with the facts, the data. And that has been very successful. The clients that I'm working with, we really don't have to produce any more documents. We're not sending in receipts or invoices or photos or any of that stuff. At this point, it's unnecessary. And I think even in the beginning, it was unnecessary. There's just such a large loss. The industry knows what the right thing to do is, and my goal is always just to make them do the right thing. But this is kind of one of those ways, is just have a strategy. How am I trying to communicate what I'm communicating? So I always think like if a phone call happens, let's say a phone call, always follow it up with an email and just say, thank you so much for talking. This is what you said you were going to do. Let me know if I understood that correctly. So that's how I always do it, is just phone call, email. And that just becomes a very easy way to do it, and holding them to the next step. So they say they'll do, and then I think that the main thing is that's the next step, and just tell them, hey, this is what you said you're going to do. I'm expecting that. What day do you think you'll do it? And then I think one of the main things is just really staying calm, even when you're frustrated, because even when I'm on the phone, but definitely the property owners that I'm working with, my clients, they're very frustrated. So if we end up on a conference call, most of the times I take all the calls now and just the homeowner just sits in the back and then I update them. But if it is a conference call where it's me, adjuster, and homeowner, we'll all jump on the phone together, and the homeowners are rightfully so very frustrated, but staying calm, I always try to remind them. So we'll do like prep calls beforehand. I'll say, hey, this is what my goal is to say, what I'm trying to accomplish today, what I want them to hear, and hopefully what we can get from them. And that usually, having a plan and a goal and a simple step usually helps kind of bring it back down to level so we can say the things we're trying to say. Not to say we're not saying like I'm frustrated, just not in the tone of frustration. So it's very actually fair, I think, to say, hey, at this point, we're extremely frustrated, and I hope you would understand that. I hope that seems fair. We've been waiting 8 weeks for you to respond to one thing. That doesn't seem fair, does it? And that's usually how I think those calls go, rather than yelling or getting upset, stuff like that. It's just handling it and dealing with the stress and, leveling that down so we can actually focus on the details. What are the main details of this claim? So that's one of the most important things I've found. I figured just sharing a few real world examples of what's been happening. So what I've seen at what can happen. In one claim, the first adjuster was extremely slow and unresponsive. I think it'd been 6 months since they'd actually made any communication. And then what we did was we submitted an exactimate and an exact contents estimate. So this took about 2 weeks to prepare. So client signed on with me 2 weeks later. We have two documents. We have a rebuild estimate and we have an inventory. And I built those out for them. And then what we do is we submitted. And then I usually like to give a carrier. So this was 2 weeks time frame. So 2 weeks from the sign on. And then submit. I like to give a carrier, usually, like if I submit on Friday, I'll give them till Tuesday. If I submit on a Monday, I'll follow up on a Wednesday usually. So it's like a 2 business day wait, and then start follow-ups. And follow-ups, unless they say, hey, can you give me 2 weeks to review this? Then I just try to do every other follow-up or every other day follow-up, phone call, email. If I have an adjuster's like direct line, I'll text them sometimes if they've already texted me, just staying on it. Hey, just wondered if you had a revised estimate yet. Just wondered if you had a revised estimate yet. And I'm already assuming that they're going to change theirs because I know they didn't pay enough. If the coverage limits, especially in the Palisades, if the coverage limits both on a burned down house or on a still standing, if those coverage limits aren't maxed out, I can just assume, oh, you need to revise yours and send more money. Guaranteed. It's not even an assumption, it's just a known thing. There's no house there that wasn't fully affected to coverage limits, whether standing or burned down. And so just follow-ups consistently, asking for that over and over and over. And then once they start to respond, it's just working with them, making adjustments, maybe sending in some like documents. Sometimes I need to send in supporting ones. So for instance, in the Palisades right now, what I've been finding, interestingly, so in the Palisades right now, what I've been finding interestingly is that a lot of times what they're lacking is they don't understand like California laws or codes. Some of these adjusters aren't even from the area, so they don't understand that there's going to be a lot of extended costs or code upgrades needed, and I need to send them information. So like sometimes it's like a 30-page document of here's all the codes referenced from the books and cited, and these are why we're asking for millions of dollars more than what you have on yours, because you just don't understand this area, which is very real and understandable. I mean, in their defense, it's like they shouldn't understand every single market per se, especially if they're getting deployed from another area that they live. They won't understand those things. So that's one of the things that I like to support them with, is just if I need to send them documents, I will send them documents, but it's always with the goal that it's supporting what we sent in as the full value. That's important, not just random documents. It's like, hey, I don't think you understand this. Here's some info, please review this. That's why we're asking for all that money. And that, I think, is one of the things I found very helpful. So when on like an inventory, when a carrier might ask like, well, why did you discard these certain items that they wanted to possibly clean? It's again, just following up with data that, hey, that's a porous material. We just discarded it because I already know that you need to pay for that to be replaced. And we took photos and we know what it is. And it doesn't really matter if those things are known. You can just move forward because it can't be cleaned. They can say that they wanted to try to clean it, but it doesn't really matter. And sometimes carriers will say, well, I can't push through that you threw it away for a total loss, but I can push through a cleaning. And a lot of times cleaning an item costs much more than actually just replacing it anyway. So sometimes you get more value for an item, like a couch. I've had many times where the couch to clean was $6,800, but just to buy the new one, it was like $5,200. So there was a $1,600 difference to clean it. And so that's just more value on the claim anyway. So sometimes that is in your favor. But that's the main thing, is just staying organized and kind of just knowing like, hey, if I need these documents, I have them in my possession. It gives me confidence in justifying why I asked for certain things I did, but I don't always need to share that with a carrier unless we get to this point where it's going to help us rather than hurt us. So I think that's important, is understanding not all documents need to be sent in, but they're ready if needed. So that's one thing I always try to think of. And then I think some of the pitfalls I've seen with some of these claims is just not keeping records, that it's like hard to get it, or like the emails are hard to find, or like just kind of staying on top of it, understanding like, oh, that document's in a folder. A lot of people are using like Dropbox or Google Drive, stuff like that, somewhere to organize this stuff in folders, saying like test results, all the documents and PDFs go there, or saying like photos of damages, all of them go there, or photos of contents, all the photos go there. And then like any Excel sheets, like naming it properly. I think naming conventions is one of my things that I find is super helpful when working a claim. If someone's done a great job of naming, comes into my system, I can just search real quick, very fast. Now, if it's just like random documents coming over, that adds a lot of time and delay, and what I'm going to say, errors of like, it's hard to see like all of it connecting when it's all disconnected. So it's kind of like putting a puzzle together with no images on top. It's like, I mean, I can try to piece this all together, but there's no context, where someone who's done a great job keeping documents organized, there's images on top of that puzzle piece, and I can go, oh, this goes here, 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 and we build a great file, very easy to get to approvals. When it's not that way, a little harder, still can do it, just takes a lot longer. So that's one thing. I think another pitfall is letting emotions take over. When emotions, what I would call swell, that the most important call is someone who's on your side. When your emotions swell, don't call the carrier, don't call the adjuster, call someone who cares about you. Now, if that's me as like a claims manager, or someone you've hired as a third party, or a friend, a family member, let the emotions swell and then talk to someone who cares about you and let that settle down, then start to think, and then send in the correspondence. That has been a huge game changer on claims that I'm working, and usually one of the bigger pitfalls in the past of a claim that I pick up of, ooh, there's been a lot of things said here, I need to reset this claim and start from square one so that we can get the adjuster back on our side. I think we need to like be a civil conversation, not that they're like always going to be our best friend, but a civil conversation. So that's one of the things too, a pitfall that I found is like thinking that the adjuster is your friend and they have your best interest in mind. That is not always the case. I've very rarely found some who are like super helpful, but I would even just think of them as professional, not our friend. But like I've had great conversations with adjusters late at night. Like someone called me 11 p.m. Hey, I'm just trying to do the right thing here. I want to get this claim closed out for the client. It looks like it's been a hard time. Can we do this, this, and this? And I'll send them documents late at night, 11 p.m., 1 a.m. And they're being professional. They're doing the right thing for you, their policyholder, but it's not like they have like huge stake in the game or like care how it pans out. Maybe a couple adjusters, but generally speaking, they're just trying to do the right thing. So don't like call an adjuster thinking, oh, they're my best friend, they're going to do me right. That's usually not the case. And most of the time it's not. And so I just think that that's a big pitfall, is like they should not be the first call, and they should not be the one you're confiding in, or like they'll act nice, like on the phone, they'll say things like, oh, we have your best interest in mind, oh, we want to get this dealt with too. But then it's like, well, how are we 10 weeks later and you still haven't done the thing that you said you do? It just shows like reality is shown through communication and consistency. And if they're not consistent, it's like, well, you can say all you want that you care or you're going to do the right thing, but if you don't do it, then it's like your words meant nothing. And that is, most claims I'm working, that is very real and how they usually go. So I would just say stick to the facts of the case, stay organized is very helpful, and then be assertive when needed. Is if they say no and you're not in your list of accepting that as a no, then you just stay with it, stay super assertive. And that's probably where I win the most cases, is I'm willing for them to say no to me 100, 200, 300 times. I don't care. It's like, you can say no all you want. I know that if I just send in a little more information, or I stay on the claim or ask for reassignments, I can reopen that claim 1,000 times if I need to. So that's the most important thing I've realized is no does not mean no in the insurance world. They're really saying, well, not right now. We're not going to pay you right now. So sometimes I need to send in more info because now I know that opens the claim back up. They have to review the info, and now we're in a new conversation. Anytime new data is in, new conversation. So I don't even have to remember that they said no. Hey, I sent you more info, so I don't care that you said no. I'm looking at when are you going to say yes. That's the most important piece there. So just in conclusion, I would say communication is super helpful, being proactive, be thorough, and don't give up. You're not just a claim number. I think that that's one thing I've always hated about this industry. On the insurance side, most people are a claim number. On a contractor side, most people are a address. And on my side, I always think you are a person, and all my files are named with the client's name, because I need to wake up in the morning and say I'm working for this person, and that helps me stay motivated. So I think that that's to remind you, you're not a claim number. You are a person. You have a story. You have your health, and your home matters. Your life being restored matters. But if you're overwhelmed and just like really need help and you've been considering it, find an advocate. They can make a huge difference. It could be someone like me who's a claims manager who doesn't have like what I would say like public adjusters, or lawyers sometimes will work on percentages. Sometimes that's not needed on a claim, or at least as not as early as it feels like it's needed. Sometimes you just need someone who knows how to get that thing moving. And so I think just do that, keep lines open, advocate for yourself and be persistent, and don't let the stress take over, and find that you can actually successfully recover from these things and get the carriers to do the right thing. So if you found this video helpful, I would say just hit subscribe. We're going to be doing a lot of these tips for homeowners and contractors, how to handle large losses, catastrophic losses, just claims in general. Also love to hear how your experience has been, both negative and positive.